Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is David Palmer and Leo King, and we are here for Deep Astrology for the week of July 17th through the 23rd of 2018. And I'm so happy to be here with you today because we're going to go deep into what's going on right now with the planets, what's going on in the universe. And definitely, it's a big time because we're in between eclipses, which is always my favorite and sometimes my not so favorite time. It depends on where you're at in the middle of it all, you know, because I always believe that these eclipses are always the biggest page turners in life. And so sometimes that page turns into a great place. Sometimes that page turns into places that we're not ready for. But at the end of the day, the universe is always turning the page into a place that's the best for us in our life. And, you know, when we look at the astrology, I'm going to be very blunt. This week, it's not like the craziest aspects in the world are happening. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not like astrologically, you know, when you were to look at it on paper, you'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, it's, you know, there's some stuff happening. I'm not going to say it's like there's nothing happening. There's definitely some stuff. But it's definitely where we're going to need to go really deep to really try and understand the really deep stuff that's going on, where you would normally look at an astrology, you know, chart or just even look up at the heavens and kind of go, well, I don't know, is this really significant? You kind of have to use the playbook of what's been happening before and what's about to happen and the things that are happening in between these zones and what's happening to understand this whole entire kind of macro understanding of what's going on and so important right now. And I really feel that it's important for people to realize, one, we're in between eclipses, and so whatever's happening in between these eclipses are always setting things up. So there's a lot of setup action happening right now in the universe. Another big thing is we really need to follow the moon this week because the moon and the sun are the two luminaries that create these eclipse cycles. And because we just had a solar eclipse on July 12th, now we are in what's called the waxing phase of the moon, and this waxing phase of the moon is going to hump over a lot of planets, which you can actually physically see in the sky. So if you go up at night and you look up right after sunset, you'll be able to see Venus, which is right there on the descendant, right there on that western part of the sky, and then you'll be able to look up and see Jupiter, and then you'll be able to see Antares, and then you'll be able to see Saturn, and then you'll be able to see Mars. And this week the moon is going to be covering Venus, the moon is going to be covering Jupiter, and I think it's very important to really pay attention to these spots this week because really at the end of the day we are going to also be coming into a big quarter square of the moon, which means we are halfway in between the next eclipse, because that's how it works. And so when you become in between eclipses, literally, when the actual sun and the moon meet in a square, we have to pay attention to that tension spot and what is being brought up to the surface. And this week we're going to be talking about the big quarter square of the moon in Libra to the sun in Cancer, both cardinal signs, both very opposite energies, right? Libra is all about, you know, air, intellectuality, balancing things out, where Cancer is very emotional and watery and deals with emotions and moods, where Libra is like, hey, you can't bring this mood into the mix. Let's try and find some balance here. Like, if you're going to be crying over spilled milk, you know, like, is that fair to the other people in the room? You know, there's a lot about judgment that comes up too. So this week we really have to watch not only our judgment on ourselves, onto others, but also relationships become a big part of this game. The reason why? Well, Libra rules the sign of relationships. And of course, this is a big time because relationships, I think, are a big part to play in life because, of course, Venus is in Virgo where it's at its fall position, but it's in an earth sign. And I think it's really interesting to see these awesome aspects Venus has been doing, but now Venus is moving into some other spaces that we're going to be talking about. The other big news this week actually is Mars retrograde conjuncting the South Node. So if you want to talk about, you know, really facing a lot of either karmic patterns or especially a lot of things dealing with courage, strength, identity. These things are at heightened degrees. And especially when, it's Mars retrograde on the South Node, there's a little bit of this needing to find extra courage where maybe it's not there, or finding extra gas in the tank when it's not there. Having to really face situations with confidence where maybe you don't have that confidence. And in Aquarius, it's learning to trust that all the pieces are there. You're just going to have to find a way to put all these puzzle pieces together and all work out, I think that we tend to fragment ourselves with Mars, especially retrograde in Aquarius, right? Where parts of our identity, our courage are spracked all over the place, and we're trying to have to kind of piece them together. It kind of reminds me of like whenever you see an astronaut up at the space station take like a thing of water or a juice or food, and they sprinkle it up in the no gravity zone, and everything kind of sprinkles all over the place. But there is always this one weird way on how they can kind of collect it all back together and bring it all together. So really, when it comes to your confidence right now in your life and your direction in your life, and especially, I think there's going to be a lot that we're going to cover this week about trust, and trusting that things will work out, trusting that things actually have a lot of doorways open, when really, I think our confidence levels need to really kind of come into this place of, where are the blocks? Where are the subconscious energies that are blocking our confidence? Where are the patterns in our life that might be covering a space where, it's actually inhibiting us from moving forward? We got to face a lot of those things. And of course, when a lot of planets are retrograde, people can kind of feel like, oh, things aren't going anywhere. And of course, the main one is Mars retrograde, right? The planet of action, the planet of direction. And when it's on the South Node, there's a little bit of this feeling like, am I going to lose the game? It's kind of like being in the finals for basketball or in the World Series or something, and you're down by a bunch, and it's like, there's no way I'm going to make it through this. It's like, I don't know about that. Have you guys ever heard about Kurt Gibson in the 1988 World Series? Came off the bench. I know a lot of women are watching this and are probably like, why is this guy bringing up baseball? But you know what? That guy came out of nowhere and hit a home run and won the game when he was hurt. And that's what reminds me of Mars retrograde. And not only Mars retrograde, but Mars retrograde on the South Node. Is no matter how we might be feeling, no matter how much we might be going through things, at any moment in our life, there's always an opportunity to find a way to move forward, to find that confidence and still win. And I know winning is something we don't like to talk about in the whole spiritual world, as it kind of is attached to ego or attached to some sort of like, outside of the spiritual self. But the truth is winning can be looked at in many different ways. Winning in your life, when it comes to winning in your confidence and the direction that you're going. Winning as far as finding confidence in yourself and feeling good about yourself again and trusting in the universe. And so we're not at a place of loss. I think the only thing that we're losing in our life is really shitty patterns in our life that we don't want anymore. So really, when you look at this, when you feel that feeling of loss, where are you attaching that feeling of loss to? Are you feeling that attachment to feeling of loss of your whole life? Mars in Aquarius tends to look at all the pictures and all the paintings and all the places in your life and all the things and all the connections. And so do you feel like everything's just all falling apart? This isn't the Tower card in tarot or something. Really what this is realizing that there's a lot of scattered energy, and it's just about learning how to, okay, let me find this part of this, and let me find this part of this. All the pieces in life are there to make things work. And remember that Chiron, which is in Aries, and dealing definitely with parts of ourselves, not only that we're facing and having to learn to integrate, which might feel weird or off, is in the sign of Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So when you have Chiron in Aries with a Mars retrograde, there's kind of a triple whammy here with also the South Node on Mars of this feeling of like, can I really pull shit off? Can I really get where I need to go? Can I really make things happen in the way that I want to? And so I think it's very crucial and it's very important for people to realize that a lot of this stuff has to deal deeper than just kind of like, oh, things are going to work out. No, it has to deal with you having to actually integrate some very weird parts of your subconscious self some very weird parts of your old patterns in your life and learn to see that this is the things that we are putting to loss. These are the things that we are putting to bed in order for us to achieve more in our life, to reach higher. Believe it or not, with Saturn in Capricorn, and with Pluto in Capricorn, and with Uranus in Taurus, and with Venus in Virgo, there is a lot of stability around in the middle of what we could feel like a lot going on. But the universe has got stability, and I think that's extremely important to pay attention to. Now, yes, next week, there's a Mercury retrograde. And then the day after the Mercury retrograde, we have this really big total lunar eclipse in Aquarius on top of Mars retrograde, squaring Uranus. So next week, you know, what are we building up towards? I don't want to call it chaos, but yeah. I think a lot of it is like the freak outs that we put ourselves through emotionally about whether or not we're going to be able to do this. So the preparation work that you do this week and learning not to feel at a loss, the preparation work that you do this week about making sure that you don't feel, I don't know, like everything's going to go down the tubes, is preparing you so when that lunar eclipse comes next week with a Mercury retrograde, that you don't let your head, that you don't let your mind, that you don't let everything inside of yourself freak out when this eclipse comes. You know, whether you're racing in life or whether you're going to a job interview or whether you're going to go on a date or whether you're going to go to prom, we all have to do prep work, right? You know, most women before they go to prom try the dress on before they go, right? And they actually do their whole hair and they do the whole thing. They're not even at prom. It's like a Tuesday night. It's like, that's what this week is about. The pre-rehearsal to not freaking out about losing in your life. I know that might sound crazy, but that's what a lot of this is like learning how to deal with, you know, maybe this isn't just like a total like crazy loss in my life, or maybe this isn't me losing, or maybe this isn't me being able to get the things that I want in my life and move forward. I think a lot of this is this kind of pre-dress rehearsal. The other interesting aspect that I think is extremely big is we have got the sun finally going to move into Leo. Now I know I'm a little biased because I'm a Leo, I'll say it. But you know, the sun moving into Leo is the natural place for the sun. Now whenever the sun comes into Leo, it definitely kind of brightens a lot of the intensity of the universe up because the sun returns home, and this whole entire astrology that we talk about is literally based upon this whole entire idea of illumination. And so when the sun comes into Leo, it illuminates everything that's going on at the most heightened degrees, and we're going to be having eclipses that start next week. And with Mercury in Leo this week, which is going to start to station at its stationary degree where it will retrograde, there's a lot of things where we want to get all the details together this week before the Mercury retrograde happens next week, where then a big lunar eclipse happens, and we kind of step into this place where you want this week to get all the information, to weigh out all the things, and to get everything together, because we are next week stepping into a Mercury retrograde on top of one of the most gnarly, intense lunar eclipses I've seen in my life ever running astrology. I'll give you the little pause there because yes, go look at it. July 27th is definitely not for kids. You know, this is rated mature. And so, the good news though, love, happiness, finding happiness, and dealing with a lot of your deep subconscious emotional parts of yourself are ways to get through this. You know, the sun is traveling through the end of Cancer, and I've always said this, and you'll hear me every year or anytime there's planets at these last degrees of water signs. Oh boy, the emotions go really deep and they start to come into a freak out mode of one, either, you know, sometimes it could bring depression, two, it could bring out feelings of hopelessness or loss or feelings of, you know, drowning energetically or literally. You know, the last degrees of Cancer definitely bring the moods really extreme, and when you're in between eclipses and there's all these things starting to build up for this major lunar eclipse next week and a Mercury retrograde, yeah, there's every reason for you to take this week in stride and realize that, yeah, it might not look like on paper, like, oh, like it's not like major transits are happening this week, but it's all these things, these dominoes that are building and building and building and building up for next week's major kind of release point. So whatever you can do this week to get all the details together, whatever you can do this week to illuminate and bring light to the situations in your life, realize that this isn't you losing, that this isn't you failing, that this is you learning to let go of those feelings of failure, because how are we going to manifest a radical, awesome life? That's what Uranus and Taurus is trying to teach us, is to know our confidence in ourselves, our abilities, our talents, and with the opposition, of course, with Jupiter, which is in Scorpio, not direct, knowing to trust. Trust in our skills. Trust that the universe will deliver us the things we need, and because Saturn's in Capricorn, at the right time. So I think that there's a lot of freak out over like timing always, and when can this happen, and is this going to happen, and all these things. You know, Saturn in Capricorn is the timekeeper. And with Saturn starting to make trines to Uranus, believe it or not, it's actually going down now, you're going to start to notice, you know what? Crazy radical timing is definitely in play in a good way. And so right when you think the timing isn't right or it won't work, some crazy radical thunderbolt and lightning and godly force shows up out of the heavens and just drops everything on you at that timing. So when you look at the future and you look at how this is all building up, do we really want to set ourselves up for a freak out next week with a Mercury retrograde and a lunar eclipse on top of Mars retrograde, South Node? Do we really want to go through that? And also at the same time, you need to remember, as the Sun's entering Leo by Sunday, we're getting ready for the Sun and Mars to oppose, which is another kind of a feeling of our soul, our identity, feeling at odds. And feeling like, are we aligned, and is our soul aligned with our identity and our purpose? And oppositions of the Sun and Mars is conflict between, you know, our true authentic self and our soul, and whether or not it's getting what it wants, or does it feel up to this loss? And how can we be happy if we feel like we're losers? How can we be happy if we feel like everything's falling apart? How can we feel happy if we think that everything isn't going in the direction that we want to? It's Mars in Aquarius, baby, retrograde. It's a roller coaster in all random areas, and that's the whole point. The universe is taking us to weird areas to learn more, weird directions to reintegrate our identity, to become a new identity that's more revolutionized, knowing how to deal with unpredictability, and knowing, more importantly, the power of connection, of seeing all the things in life that we have and how do we utilize them. Also, with the Sun coming into Leo now, we are going to be starting more of this big cross, this fixed cross with the Sun and Mercury in Leo, with Mars in retrograde in Aquarius, with Jupiter in Scorpio, and with Uranus and Taurus. So, you know, when you get all these big cross energies going on, it's powerful, because what it does is it brings everything on the table in life. And it can feel like, you know, there's nothing missing from the table either. It's like kind of like going to, you know, a garage sale or something, and instead of selling just the crap in the back, it's like, I'm selling the whole house, like everything's here. Whoa, I didn't know you had all this stuff, you know? Like there's definitely a part of our life where everything in life is on the table. Whenever you're dealing with fixed energy, it's all of your most internal fixed energetic self. So there's a lot that comes up that goes, wow, this is a lot that we have to put on the table to sort out. And that's something not to be afraid of. That's something to embrace. Because very rarely in life do we get it to where everything kind of gets thrown on the table. That everything comes into a place to where we can actually start to sort things out, to move forward, to move on to a better path in our life. And especially during eclipse season, you'd rather have everything on the table during magical luminary eclipses where the universe is doing magic, to be able to let all those things move forward, just instead of just half the things, a quarter of the things, and so forth. Before we go into the charts, I want to say, when I combine all these things I looked at this week, you know, I don't want to call it a break. Sure, energetically it might feel like there's like, oh, things are lifting a little bit, or I'm feeling better. Yes, but I do want to remind you that there is a major setup, that these dominoes are all falling at the moment. And so even though they haven't come to the last fall, and wherever that may leads, that they are collectively starting to all come together. And so it's important to not try and just write this week off in your life as, well, I'll figure this one out later. Because if you don't figure things out at the moment, with Mercury going retrograde next week into a lunar eclipse, there's a freak out that comes. Situations that are unpredictable that you can't think about right now that will come up that would have helped you if you would have figured it out now. Especially Mercury in Leo when it goes retrograde, it can become a dramatic, over-dramatic, oh my gosh, this is not good. It's a king or a queen on a castle like, oh God, I should have done that, you know, and there's that, and that over-dramaticism, especially with a lunar eclipse in Aquarius and Sun in Leo and a bunch of Jupiter and Scorpio and Uranus and Taurus. We all know that the most dramatic people in the world are all these fixed signs, especially Leos and Aquarius energy. Like, do we really want to go through that craziness and that over-dramaticism in our life? This is a week to use so you don't step into that crazy, over-dramatical situation in your life. Let's have some fun. Let's look deep into the chart right now. Alrighty. What I got popped up for you all right now is the transits for today, July the 17th of 2018. So I just did this at 5:44 p.m. here in California, and let's look at what's going on. Well, when we look at things, one, we're getting ready for this setup of the moon. Okay, the moon, of course, in Libra, and we've got the sun in Cancer. And what I think is interesting is, well, we're doing this waxing thing. So if you see the moon, and if you look at it in the sky, the moon's going to be traveling this week all the way here into Sagittarius, where it'll end the week, okay? That we're talking about at least. And the moon's going to be covering the biggest planet, Jupiter, this week. And so it's also going to, of course, be making it square to the sun, but we'll get to that. But if we look at this, what is this moon in Libra about? Well, one, it would be nice to find some peace through these very intense emotional times. I think it's important for you. Also the sign of relationships, so it's digging deep in all your relationships and seeing where your emotions are at and finding comfort and speaking your feelings and letting things out, especially Mercury in Leo, needs to let out its heart, needs to let out its feeling, or else it's going to become an over-dramatic nightmare. So I think it's important to communicate right now. It's important to, Venus energy, which is what Libra is, and the moon's here. It wants to feel good. It wants to feel positive. It wants to feel connected to people. It wants to deal with situations with relationships and people. We have Venus, which is in Virgo. Now it's done with this grand trine aspect. See how it was trining Uranus and then it was trining over to Saturn. So that's done. But this week we'll be talking about this Venus-Jupiter aspect, which I think is pretty cool coming up. And then, of course, we're going to talk more about this Mars coming into retrograde with the South Node. But as you could tell from an astrologer point of view, if you were just to look at this, you'd be like, okay, well, it's not like the craziest astrology day ever. It's just another day. But why don't we go forward? Now, let's take a look for Thursday, which Thursday is the day where we are going to be dealing with this exact quarter square of the moon. So the sun will be at 27 degrees, the moon will be at 27 degrees, and this is where things get interesting to me. One, whenever you get this square, you know you're exactly halfway to the eclipse, because remember the eclipse is going to happen right here at 4 degrees of Aquarius, and we're halfway. You can actually see the actual halfway point. And you're going to be able to see this very beautiful quarter square of the moon with Jupiter up in the sky on the 19th into the 20th. It'll blow your mind. You'll think it's so beautiful. You'll see this huge bright star. We just saw it with Venus and the moon. But what does this mean? I mean, a lot of it is, one, there's a lot of emotions on the table in life right now, okay? So many. Our feelings, our moods, and when you've got Saturn and Pluto in the opposite side of Capricorn, there's this kind of feeling like no matter how much I'm trying to get comfortable in my life, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep moving. I gotta keep taking a step forward. I gotta keep climbing the ladder. You know, Capricorn does not like going down the ladder. It likes going up the ladder. It doesn't like falling down the hill. It likes going up the hill. But it's kind of hard to go up the ladder in life when, number one, you know, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of insecurities. The moon is going to be covering a lot of these as it's in Libra and starting to judge. And judge certain feelings, judge certain emotions, question things, weigh things out, try and understand what feels good, what doesn't. This is also negotiation on some sort of level about security and emotion within yourself, with other people. You know, this is definitely you not judging yourself for how you feel, but at the same time putting up some sort of, I don't want to say boundary because that's more of a Scorpio thing, but some sort of diplomacy with yourself of like, I'm not going to let my emotions get this way in order to keep peace in my life. I'm not going to let emotions go this way in a relationship so I can keep peace in the relationships. And I think that's extremely important during this time. It's also extremely important because when we look at everything astrologically, you know, it's happening at the exact same time that Mars is starting to come onto this south node, right? Which is going to bring up patterns of our ego and our self and our identity and how we disrupt our lives and whether or not we can ascend our lives instead of disrupt them. These are patterns that are going to come up. And so you should think of this week like, am I disrupting my life here, or am I actually moving my life forward into a higher dimension, into a greater place? And I think that that's what this moon is covering is, sure, judgment doesn't ever feel good, but judgment can also feel good if it's in the right place. Like it's you kind of weighing out a lot of things in life and the roads that you want to be on, especially with so much of this Martian energy around. I think the Venus energy with the moon here is kind of saying, especially as Venus is in Virgo, like, you know, what is the lifestyle that you want? There's big choices that are happening here about what reality do you want, not only with your partnerships, relationships, but yourself in your life that'll make you feel good. What does that lifestyle look like? You know, whether that's based, of course, off your job, or that's based off your routine, or that's based off the way that your body looks, or your health, or any of those things. These are things that come up with Venus and Virgo, and that's why it's in fall position, because it requires actually doing something about it. You know, like to feel good, you gotta like do something. Like you gotta clean the house to feel good, right? It's like basic things like that. Or like if you wanna feel good, you gotta change your diet to look or feel healthier. Or, you know, in order to, you know, feel more like together, maybe you got to make a change to your schedule in order to get things done, and maybe you love sleeping in until noon or something, and maybe that's just not going to do it no more. And these are the things that we need to weigh out, and we need to make judgments on in ourselves and not be harsh on ourselves, that the judge inside of ourselves is saying, you know, this isn't fair to me. This isn't fair to the way that I want to live my life healthier and better. This isn't fair. And I think that that's how we have to look at it. Like, are we being fair to ourselves? And I think what it's uncovering is, why are we going through these weird moods? We're going through these weird moods because we haven't brought some sort of judgment call on what's fair and what's not fair of the certain moods we're going through based off the routines, the rhythms, and these lifestyles that we are trying to explore. Now, I brought up when Mars went retrograde, and when I did that, I don't know, weeks ago, that Mars was going to take you into lots of different people, lots of different places, lots of weird places. I think I remember saying is even as weird as somebody smoking crack behind a freaking dumpster. I mean, it like literally is like taking you to some of the weirdest places in the world. Some are weirder than others for some people, on different levels, depending on the kind of soul that you are. So if you're a gardener and you live a pretty peaceful life, well, maybe it throws you into a, you know, a random store where there's no flowers and they sell, you know, something that you've never been around before or something. I don't know. But I can tell you at the end of the day, we're all exploring places that feel alien to us, or there is an odd curiosity to them all, because I feel that Aquarius is curious enough to try and figure things out. and look in different directions. Because if we don't look in different directions in our life, and if we don't look at, different ways or different worlds, or we don't explore these places, then at the end of the day, we really don't know how to bring everything together to move forward in our life. So it's important for us to go to these weird places. It's important for us to face our uncomforts in our life, because it's unfair to ourselves if we hold ourselves back to the beauty of the world because we're uncomfortable. Sometimes you got to face your uncomforts and realize, they're all based off your own way of how you take care of yourself. This is the end week of Cancer. The most basic level of foundation of consciousness of Cancer is how you nurture and mother yourself. And when you've got a moon square to Libra, it's are you fair to yourself on how you take care of yourself and how you mother yourself? Sometimes it's okay to not judge yourself, to feel better that you need to go to the bathroom or something and sit on the toilet. You might not even need to go do a number 1 or number 2. But maybe you just need to check your phone, or maybe you need to breathe. It's okay for you to do different things to take care of yourself. On this week, we'll use for an example. I've got water here because it's hot. This is, I think, the first sip of water I've ever taken in a deep astrology in the middle of it, but it's taking care of myself, so whatever. Look how easy that was. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable to do some things, though, that are bigger than just taking a sip of water, especially when it comes to relationships, because when you have Libra as where the moon is, and you have the sun where Cancer is, guess what? Relationships have emotions, and maybe it might be uncomfortable with certain relationships about feelings that need to be brought up, or situations that you feel that you want to go over. And that's where Libra is about diplomacy, negotiation, trying to find a way to work together, even through maybe emotions that aren't the same way. I mean, we're seeing in the world right now with politics, whether you're left or right, it's just this is going to peak out those issues this week, I guarantee you. Are we going to find a way to get along or not? Or what's the situation? Or are we judging other people off their feelings? How can we judge other people off their feelings? No matter what side of the fence we're on in politics or religion or in anything, people are allowed to feel however they feel. If that makes them feel better, that's not your job to be the judge of that. So, feelings are a place that are the most precious thing in the world, because they are your own way that you react to the life in the world. So it's important for you this week to embrace them. Make sure that you're not throwing up your emotions on people either. And at the same time, that you're not throwing up your own emotions on others by judgment. It's a big deal as well. And trying to find a way to get along, trying a way to make things work for all parties is extremely important through this transit coming up this week, because this is one of the most major transits. And especially because if we look at this next chart, this is where we get to some funky stuff. One, the moon's going to cover Jupiter on Friday. And this is going to be the first time since March that the moon has come over Jupiter as it's been direct, okay, moving forward. And I think what this does at the end of this week, and if we look at Venus, Venus is starting to make nice sextiles here. I think what this does is it brings up this realization that we have to look deeper into what we need in our life in order for us to feel connected, to feel like 100% things are going to be okay. Jupiter and Scorpio need some sort of commitment from the universe, from God, from a trusted source. And especially I say God in the universe because of Neptune and trine to this space. There's a lot that is saying you know what? We are moving forward in life. All the pieces are there. Jupiter and Scorpio is the happy, person, whether it's through, remember, what is Scorpio? Scorpio is death and transformation. So in order for us to benefit in our life, we have to face fear, the fear of change. It also is the fear of allowing to give Scorpio is where we give. That's why it's ruled by investments. It's ruled by other people's money. It's ruled by, the things that we give to people. It's ruled by loans. It's ruled by, it's the opposite of Taurus, where it's like I build a tree on my own with a seed and some water, and this is my tree. Scorpio is the act of giving away or giving the energy of the banana off the tree. But growing the tree is Taurus. So this is where we're learning to be comfortable with trusting that whatever we need in the universe, not only can we receive, but at the same time that we get put in the positions to where we have to give as well. And by giving and learning to accept, because trust me, you're talking to somebody who doesn't like to accept shit from anybody. Like people could offer me, I don't know, anything in the world, and I'm usually like, no, I'm okay. But it's like I'm missing out on something great. Jupiter in Scorpio is teaching us all to accept learning how to give and learning how to receive. That's all sex is, right? Give it and receive it. Depending on what side of the fence you're on, you're giving and receiving. You know what I mean? And that's why Scorpio rules sex. So, also with Jupiter in Scorpio, there is now with this direct motion of, some sexual exploration wherever that may go. And that's not a bad thing. I think that helps kind of define who you are and kind of gives you some sort of trust factor back in life, because if you have sexual issues, whether they come from some negative aspects or they come from some traumas in life, Jupiter in Scorpio is trying to repair a lot of that stuff as well, and trying to show you, no matter what the experiences that you've had in those spaces are definitely places that are teaching you trust. Because when we have some sort of negative aspect, no matter how deep it might go, no matter how hard it might be, no matter how traumatic it might be, we can't really compare to other people either. I think that's a lot of this week with the judgment. Like, oh, I've been through way worse than you, and I'm going through a way worse situation than you. You don't understand me, and you don't understand what I'm going through. It's like, the second you start pushing that on people, are you going to be able to receive help? Nobody wants to help somebody like that when you're the one judging them on I'm going through something worse than you. You're also having to learn to accept the help. So if you are going to be the one that says, I'm kind of not going through a good time, it's like learning to go, well, I better be willing to accept it instead of being like, well, it's just a really bad time, so no, fuck you, or whatever. It's like this Moon Jupiter thing is definitely covering a lot of the new direction we're going and learning to give and receive, sexual energy, and even deeper than that, transformation of self, that we can transform. It's like we're exploring the red light district in Amsterdam a little bit, or we're exploring Jurassic Park and knowing where the fences are. Maybe I shouldn't jump over that fence. There's a Tyrannosaurus Rex there, But I want to peep my head. There's a curiosity, especially with Mars retrograde in Aquarius, of this excitement. I'm in this crazy place, I might as well look, So, knowing boundaries, which is what Jupiter is in Scorpio, is knowing the boundary lines in life. Because with Scorpio, yes, you can go too deep. I'm going to use some crazy analogies here. Parental discretion is advised. You can fuck someone too hard. You can, overgive too much in life. You can receive too much in life and take from people. So there's learning boundaries with Scorpio. I don't know how girls do it. Guys, we can't have 30 orgasms in a day. It's just I think there's a world record of a guy who did 42 or something. I don't know. Maybe someone can look it up in the live chat. There's a Guinness Book of World Record of a guy having a lot of orgasms. I don't know who he is or what he did, but it was a lot, okay? And I'm sure he was shooting blanks at the end of the day. But the whole thing about this whole sex thing and other aspects of giving and receiving and all this stuff is knowing your boundaries. Girls, for some reason, I don't know, you guys are kind of exempt from this because you guys can have 25 orgasms in 20 minutes and go out and have a great day. As a guy, if you try and do 3, 4, or 5, you are toast. You're just I'm done. And of course, guys get the whole kind of cliche thing of after we have an orgasm, we tend to pass right out, right? Because it's giving energy. It's a lot easier to receive, isn't it? Scorpio loves receiving, I think Scorpio loves giving too, don't get me wrong, but It's always easier to receive than it is to give, because when you give, you're giving something that you've had and trusting that that person that is receiving it is going to love it, accept it, and what are they going to bring you back? Like, are they going to bring you back love? Or in the case of sex, it's pretty simple. Are they going to bring you back a kid? Like, I know I'm like doing like really deep talk here. At the same time, I'm talking very kindergarten levels or 7th grade health fucking class, where it's like, you know, the sperm creates a baby, and that's the receiving end of what you give. And then you get a baby that both people enjoy, and then that baby creates more things in the world. You know, like it's, you know, it's Jupiter Scorpio lessons. Now that it's direct, these are the things that we have to really do. And on a very deep level with this Jupiter in Scorpio, remember now that it's direct, it's cleaning up the messes of 2014 and 2015 and even into 2016 where Mars went retrograde, of all those deep fears. And if you actually tap deeply into who you are as a spirit right now, okay? And you look at a fear that's in front of you, you will notice that you might be scared, but there's something telling you not to be scared. You're actually pushing through the fear, whereas 3 years ago, fuck no, you would not push through that fear. You would back away like, Why do you think Jupiter's here now? Because that karmic cycle that we went through needs to be shown by Jupiter. It's okay. You learned what's fearful, what boundaries are, but that doesn't mean you still can't gain and grow and explore and live and thrive while still facing fears. So when you come up to a fear, it's usually where, especially with Jupiter, all of the gold is, all of the benefits that you've ever wanted in your life is sitting right in the place where you fear the most. So when you back away from fear, Jupiter doesn't pay you out like Monopoly. Sorry, you know, Monopoly man does, you know, he twiddles his little mustache and goes, I don't have $200 for you. Sorry, keep going. It's like, what? I thought I was supposed to get 200, bro. You know, it's like, I just went through Boardwalk, dude. I just paid it. The dude's got a hotel on there. Well, sorry. You didn't, you know, show up. You didn't bring that. You were afraid. You know, you're not facing fears. You know, you feared going through Boardwalk. Why don't you come into why don't you roll the dice without fearing on hitting Boardwalk? You probably are hitting Boardwalk because you're energetically putting out there that you're gonna fail and you're gonna hit Boardwalk and you're gonna hit this perfect number on the thing. Because when we put a fear out and we project that fear out and we don't face it and we don't conquer it and we don't see the benefits in facing that fear and being positive and getting over that fear, and especially in combination with this Mars and South Node conjunction, which look at is 5 and 5. What that does is it puts us into that place where we feel like we're going to lose everything. It puts ourselves into that place where we feel these subconscious patterns of our identity of loss, that we're not going to be able to pull through, that we're not going to be able to make it happen, that all the pieces don't fit when they do. When they literally do. The universe doesn't give us a life where things don't all fit. Sure, sometimes jobs don't fit, sometimes relationships don't fit, sometimes pants don't fit, sometimes shoes don't fit. I get it. But that means there's other ones that do. But in this situation, it's almost like, especially with Jupiter and Scorpio, in square to this, and especially as Mars is getting ready to square Uranus, look at this, at 2 degrees, again in retrograde, you know, it's about realizing that there is the fertile ground in which you have now. You have the tools, you have the things around you, but you have to learn to integrate them. The pants do fit, but maybe you got to wiggle a little bit. You know, the shoes do fit. Maybe they're brand new, so you got to walk in them. Maybe you need a shoehorn. If you buy real shoes, you need a shoehorn. That's a guy thing. I hope you guys know that. Like, if you buy some Hugo Boss real shoes, like some real $500 shoes, you need a freaking shoehorn. Like, there's little things like this in life that are where automatically we see something, it doesn't fit right away, or we're fearful it ain't going to fit, and we don't try, and we back out, and we don't even see. You could be wearing the most hottest shoes on the block, but all you had to do was get a shoehorn, or all you had to do was wiggle those jeans on, or all you had to do was maybe try in that relationship a little bit longer, just give it that extra bit. Or maybe that job, you just needed to keep looking at other directions and see what other tools do we have here to make this happen. Because with Uranus and Taurus, it is a fertile land with a million different crazy radical things that you got to look at it from weird angles. And that's the thing about Uranus and Taurus. When it comes to making money or when it comes to manifesting things, it's not just like 1, 2, 3. It's a lot more like, okay, here's 1, let's look at 55, and then let's look at 45. And how does that connect to 2? Oh, I see. If I put 2 before there and I put 54 there, and that way of looking at it, and we put it in that order, fuck it, maybe it'll work. Let's go to Saturday, July 21st. The reason why I picked this day is 1, Mercury is going to be at 22 degrees of Leo, and it is going to be squaring the moon. All right? Now, this is also going to be the last day of the sun in Cancer. So, Saturday, I don't want to say is the worst day or anything like that, but we can really get... The second that July 21st hits, this will be where that dress rehearsal, as I talked about at the beginning of this, of facing fear and questioning and doubt for things that maybe you committed to with the Jupiter aspect. So, you know, like because when Mercury squares the moon, it starts to question the emotions. We've got the sun in the last degree of Cancer, the highest degree. You know, this is where Robin Williams was born, you know, was on these degrees right here, you know, and it's like learning to start to integrate this like radical, deep, high and low wave of emotion and not letting those fears overtake us. Because the moon in Scorpio now is getting big questions from Mercury and Leo. Like, is this all going to work out? Is this all going to be good for me? Like, am I going to be positive through this? Is this all going to be okay? 100%. Don't freak out. This is a week of learning the non-freak out things in life. And because this weekend is very critical, because with the moon in Scorpio, remember, we can attach ourselves emotionally to dark energies. And because the moon, if we look at the chart here, I want to show you guys. So yes, on Saturday it's at 22 squaring Mercury. But then a couple hours later, the moon will then move to 24 degrees. And what does this mean? Well, Jupiter hasn't been to that degree in 12 years, something like that, right? So yes, Jupiter went retrograde at 23 degrees, okay? So now we're moving into moon territory that hasn't had Jupiter's kind of wisdom to kind of, you know, train us and understand how to face fear. So we could kind of drop down deep into the bucket on Saturday night. Like, it's the last day of Cancer, it's the moon in Scorpio and it's a fall position, it's not happy, you know, it's not happy. But at the end of the day, I think what it means is, 1, we need to learn to pick ourselves up and not feel like things are not going to work out. It's the ultimate energy of trust and seeing the light and seeing forward and seeing things and realizing we go through moods. And with Mars still on that south node, that are we going into a place of disruption in our life or rising higher? It's going to be if you know what, if you can get some sort of like 3-week tattoo, or I would say 2 more months tattoo that would just stay and then go away, like I would put like, you know, freak out or rise high on each arm. And these are the choices you're having with your ego and stuff with this Mars retrograde for a while. Now, the good news, there's good news in all this. On Sunday, the sun finally moves into Leo. Mercury moves to 23 degrees where it is going to be stationed because it's not going to move. It's done at 23 degrees. And how funny, Mercury is going to be squaring the spot that Jupiter went retrograde at 23 degrees Scorpio in March. But look at this, the moon's in Sagittarius, it's trining the sun in positivity, and this out of this water we come into fire, out of nowhere, just like, whoa, turn it on. Okay, all right, now it's fire time. Leo time, happy, positive. The moon sextiling Mars. You know, I think that, you know, we can get through some humps this week when we face our fears, when we don't try and demolish ourselves or freak out or put endings to things that maybe we haven't thought through yet, or maybe we haven't fully been integrated into really facing things fully yet deeply. And I feel like Sunday's a really great day. Because of the fact that we are moving into a positive vibe, and we have to use these 2 days. The reason why is because this lunar eclipse is coming up on the horizon, and these days are extremely important because what we're doing is we're building up our confidence with Mars on the south node. Here's Monday, July 23rd, which is one of the best days of the year if you guys don't know, because it's my birthday. This is my solar return chart. Not exact, but pretty exact actually, because I'm 055. So this actually is like my solar return chart. What's interesting about this is these are the last days with the sun in Leo, with the moon in Sag, with the sextile to Mars retrograde, with the sun getting ready to square Uranus. You know, I think a lot of it is like, let's really try and find some positive energy to grow the life in the world that we want. And let's be open, let's believe, let's not step into fear. Look at as we end this week until we return next Tuesday. Venus is starting its opposition to Neptune the day after the 23rd. But, you know, this is where we don't need to get lost in our self-worth and, you know, our feelings and our abilities to manifest. You know, remember that Mercury is going retrograde on the 26th, so we're only a couple days away, and the days before Mercury retrograde are always eerie and weird. So, you know, by this point, you know, if you need to get some details on things, I would get them by then. Because if we move, once we go into next week, I'll show you. The sun's going to square Uranus, and then Mercury's going to go stationary, retrograde, and then the lunar eclipse, and next week is insanely intense. So if you want to wait till Sunday and Monday to kind of deal with things, I mean, be my guest. I mean, those are positive days, but also at the same time, you know, I think at the same time there's some deeper aspects earlier this week where we have a little bit more control with, you know, the Libra energy to be kind of fair and negotiate and work things out in ourselves and with others, whereas Sagittarius kind of goes wherever it wants, you know, whatever it is, just do it, like, you know. And so is the same way as Leo. So if you want a little bit more controlled understanding of things, I would do it early in the week. If you just kind of want to say, fuck it, let's deal with the energy, let's get everything out there, let's figure things out in life between you and the world and your life and wherever you're going, definitely Monday is like your last call. Because freak out mode and wild, crazy stuff that's coming up is all showing up next week. And we got to be prepared for it. And this is definitely that time for that. And it's been great talking to you. I forgot to mention, let's show the chart one more time, that Venus, you know, and Jupiter are sextiling on the day before that. So there's a lot of positive stuff with this week. So don't waste it, use it, because not to say there's negative stuff coming, but I mean, go watch my 2018 horoscope. It's for free. It's on YouTube. Type in Leo King 2018 horoscope. I said that the craziest months are going to be July and August, and especially in August, especially when Mercury is retrograde in the middle of these eclipses. Because remember, sure, we're in between the eclipse of the Cancer one that was at 20 degrees, and right now the lunar eclipse, which hasn't happened yet, on July 27th. But once we enter the in-between eclipses of the July 27th total, that means it's full-blown lunar eclipse and a full-blown eclipse, and then a total eclipse, solar eclipse, which is happening, you know, on 18 degrees of Leo. I think it's the 11th, 10th and 11th right there of August. That period has Mercury retrograde in the middle of it all. And Uranus going crazy, and a lot of other things that are going to be happening. And so we're about, you know, this is a time to really get the shit done now. Because next week, it's just too hairy. And once we jump on the other side of that eclipse, we're in the middle of eclipses during a Mercury retrograde, which is always freaking weird. Last year we had that stuff happen. And if you remember the eclipses of last year in August, oh my gosh. How did we make it through that one? You know, this one's even way more intense. So, prepare yourself. Use this week. Use it for your advantage. It's going to be worth it at the end of the day. Thanks so much for joining me. I truly appreciate it. If you want to watch my daily videos, they're at futurelife.tv for my daily horoscopes, which you're missing out on every day, where I also pull a card. My weekly tarot and my sun sign weekly video horoscopes are all there. futurelife.tv, or you can download the iPhone app, Future Life Modern Horoscopes. Thanks so much for all your support. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the Leo King Network, and I will see you on the next Deep Astrology.